Hello everybody. So I just want to make a quick video addressing where I think the left should go from here on out. In case you didn't know, Trump made his first address to Congress last night, and a lot of people in the press, of course, were talking about it. Um, and People who have been critical of Trump, particularly Van Jones on CNN, who I'm not a huge fan of, but he does his thing and he's right on some issues, so um, a lot of people like him too, I guess. He said that this was the moment that Trump became president last night, and I don't know really what that means because he was president for a month before and made a lot of shitty decisions. So he became president in the sense, I guess now he can be respected. Well, no, I'm not at that point either. No, I don't know if I ever will get at that point. So, um, I think it's much to do about nothing. And the reason why is that speech was designed to appeal to his base, his middle America, Rust Belt demographic that he really sought out. It's going to appeal to those people, and it was, I think, a strategic choice from his point of view because he understands that he's kind of unpopular, so he's going to cling to whatever support he has, and so that speech, he wasn't trying to win new voters over, and and that's what they even made it out to be in the press. They were saying like, oh, he has to like make this message of unity. I recall, a number of times that he made some nods to the Democrats and how there's a lot of partisan politics going on, and like noting all this opposition stuff that's happening, and of course, like people are seeing them like not clapping at every chance Trump says something. That was some dumb stuff. Uh, I think that was probably the first like address that I really like sat down and watched. So I don't have probably that much experience going into it, but like every other line, you have to stand up and applaud for every sentence. Like, oh, come on. That's the kabuki theater element to politics that, to be honest, I think I kind of took for granted, and it's the thing that well, it gets the views, I suppose. There's a report that this one got less views than what Obama did, but I digress. Kind of a distraction, honestly. The important thing is to focus on what Trump does, not what he says. So, where should the left go from here? And I'm gonna first make the point that the left, when I say that, I'm not just talking about the Democrats. The Democrats, in a lot of ways, are starting to resemble Republicans now. I mean, on foreign policy, there's just like a complete switch, and now they're being super hawkish on Russia, and for some good reason, I guess, but they're using that just as an excuse to not like talk about their other set of issues on like virtually everything. They just want to oppose him, and they're using Russia as a conduit, I think, for that. So that's a problem that has to be addressed. And now, whenever I see a Democrat on TV, including Tom Perez, who we'll get to, it's all just platitudes and vague answers to everything. There's no specific policy proposal being put out there, and that's a huge problem because what you're doing is just saying, we're going to be the opposition now, we're going to be like the Republicans were under Obama. Now, in a lot of ways, what the Republicans did kind of work. I mean, look where we are now. However, what we have to keep in mind is the electoral process, okay? Trump got in to the presidency by not winning the popular vote by 3 million votes. That is, there's no precedent for that. There's a precedent that it's happened before, but to the extent that 3 million people voted and he They 3 million more people didn't vote for him, and he's the president. So we have to understand that it's not about getting the most votes. It's not even necessarily so much about getting like organization on the ground. Like you have to do that, but you got to do it in the right places too. You have to have a 50-state strategy, as Bernie Sanders often says, and build things from the ground up. So the Democrats are missing that, and I think they're starting to get it right. Like yeah, they're talking about doing that, but beyond just doing the actual groundwork, what is your message going to be about? And I don't think there's not much evidence that they're evolving on policy in any way. Excuse me, and that it's just the same neoliberal garbage that's been going on for years. So, on Trump's address to Congress, because I want to just go over kind of like what we're up against and the comparison, like what you're seeing now compared to what is actually going to be better for the American people. It's a vast difference, and I think the Democrats they often just cave to the Republicans and they try to like resemble them on like all these economic issues and throw you a bone on social issues somewhere. Well, that's not going to be good enough. Trump, to me, is just kind of this Reagan 2.0, where he's just in love with deregulation. And it's really disheartening because there's no actual logical argument being presented. There just isn't. So I'm going to have this rule that says for every what is it specifically? For every like new regulation, 2 old ones have to be examined to see if they can be on the chopping block too. I think that's how it works. Well, like, what exactly is the argument for that? Because I mean, like, are the regulations going to be about the same topic? Is it going to be this idea that just regulation in itself is bad? Regulation is just another word for law. So, what is the actual argument for laws are bad? Not murdering someone is a law. Is that bad? Like, what law and in what context are you talking about? And people don't want to have those discussions a lot of time on the right. They just think in these simplistic sound bites, and they're like, oh, big government, corruption, bad. Yeah. Okay. And then trickle down. Yeah, this is like, I can't even like recount the entire history of trickle down for you. It goes back, even to the Great Depression and deregulation of Wall Street, and lowering people's taxes and all these things. Like there's just ample evidence, and so many economists have debunked this, and yet Republicans still cling to it because they think that magically, if we lower taxes, then the companies are going to come back to to America and give people jobs. Then that wealth is going to trickle down to the middle class. And I remember Bill Maher made the point where it's like trickle down is like throwing a hot dog to like 10 dogs and then expecting them to share. Like, no, like the people with the most power. First of all, the corporate tax rate is actually low, and I know that they try to like make some comparison to what is the tax rate overseas, and say like we're actually higher than them. Well, when you have like deductions, and also like we have tax havens where they just don't get taxed because the money is not in the country. It's like on vacation somewhere in a tax haven, as they say. These things, this is the redistribution of wealth part. And when Bernie talks about how there's been a redistribution of wealth from the middle class to the billionaire class. And this is, like I said, it has a storied history. It's been the same deal under Reagan, the same deal under George W. Bush. Also, I want to point out, I seem to recall a lot of criticism towards Obama for using his executive power. It's been like a month since Trump's been in office, and he's been kind of a little crazy off the handle of executive orders. I assume Trump supporters are going to come out immediately and apologize and say that no, I'm sorry, we were wrong. Trump was actually the dictator. He's been doing things that are massively unconstitutional, like the Muslim ban. He uses his executive power to deregulate. He takes away a rule that protects streams from mining pollution. See, all the things that Obama did, well, I won't say all, we'll say like most, there was precedent for, like his executive action on immigration. This had a precedent from Bush Sr. and Reagan. I mean, Reagan just did amnesty. He just did it. So I wish Obama would do amnesty, would have done amnesty. But he gets all this criticism, Obama, for using his executive powers. He didn't even get close to matching what Reagan did, and who knows what Trump will do. It's only been a month in his presidency. Trump, with the speech, he heavily played on emotions. He had the widow of Navy SEALs, Owens was his last name. I don't know his first name. I apologize. The widow was there, and he pointed her out, and then everyone, clapped and stood for her. And that's somehow interpreted as him being presidential. Where was the mention of the fact that in your raid in Yemen, Donald Trump, you killed 30 civilians? Yeah, I bet that doesn't look good. That's why you don't want to mention that. And then they had to move the goalposts on that. They said at first, oh, okay, we had a top Al Qaeda guy that we were targeting there. It turns out he wasn't there. Oh, okay, well we got some Al Qaeda terrorists, whatever. Turns out, no, there weren't really any terrorists there. Now the civilian death, it was lower at first. Now it's at 30. It's like, oh, okay, well now we got some useful intelligence from it. Turns out that's a little sketchy too. We don't exactly know. They're claiming that they have information that was vital that they need. But I mean, nothing really specific. He didn't say anything, Trump, in the speech specifically about what information. And you know what? Look, let's put that aside. The main problem here is killing civilians is the problem. It's not like this is the first time. This has been going on for years, and this gives the terrorists ammunition to spread their propaganda across the Middle East and say, look, America hates you. They don't care about civilian deaths. They applaud it because this Navy SEAL died, which is, it's a tragedy that had to happen. But I mean, honestly, if you're not mad at Trump for that, I don't know what to think of you as a person, because he signed that. He did that. And look, he says, oh, okay, this was started under Obama, and the generals, they insisted they did that, they did this. Well, first of all, that's not a very strong leader then, are you, then, Mr. Trump? Secondly, Obama didn't approve it for a reason. He didn't approve it because there wasn't enough evidence, and he was not comfortable doing it, clearly. So something fishy was going on there. I have a feeling that Trump didn't receive the proper information or whatever it was. But I'm not going to speculate further on that. Um, let's talk more about the Democrats now. So the DNC chair race happened, and that was very contentious. You have mainly the Perez side and the Keith Ellison side. The Keith Ellison side is more the progressive side, and Perez the establishment. Perez ended up winning, and then immediately made Keith Ellison his deputy chair. A lot of fun. And we all know that was some kind of like symbolic, like, oh, okay, now we're gonna be nice and compromised to the progressives, give you a little bone so you can just shut up for now. And I'm just, first of all, not a huge fan of Ellison, actually. I mean, he was clearly the better choice when you put him next to Perez. But, I mean, Ellison was, chummy with the donor class and defended Hillary Clinton in this weird, ridiculous way where he said if you criticize her, you're just sticking up for the GOP. No. Perez was clearly the establishment pick, and we're going to get into that. Like, this guy, he has, like, a lot of support from unions, and that's looked at as a good thing, right? But he's pro-TPP, or he was, and the problem is this, is that the people that got us into this situation, the people that were a part of Obama's party, that has to phase out, okay? We have to have a new strategy, a new approach, fresh blood in the Democratic Party. That's what I believe. And we shouldn't have, the former Democratic president be influencing things, and that's exactly what happened. He was making phone calls to DNC members. Former President Barack Obama was making calls on behalf of a DNC chair candidate. Call it what it is. It's corruption, and it's a clear bias. And I don't believe that was a right decision, and it's going to ultimately just show people that it's the same old, like Bernie coined himself. Perez is being painted as this fighter. He's not a fighter. He dodged a question on Israel about home demolitions in the West Bank. He was asked by The Intercept, and then he just, this was the Tom Perez version of fighting. That's what he did. He just walked away and didn't answer the question. He said the primary was rigged, and then he's like, "Oh, no, not really. I mean, she got more votes, but it was kind of unfair what they did to Bernie." Okay, yeah, that's right, okay. Well, the whole thing there is, I don't agree with the whole parsing words thing with that. It was rigged. It was tipped in her favor. What are you trying to argue at that point? So what should Bernie do? What I think he should do is bring the Democratic Party to him. And he'll do that mainly, I think, by, staying the path that he has been. He's an independent. And I would argue he should go further and, lead his own party. He should try and build his own support, and that will really worry the Democrats. And I think they're not only gonna just be like, oh, can you come to a rally here or come to this event and speak for us, and then we'll totally not actually consider your policies seriously. You have a few people here and there, but as a whole, the party is still lacking support for a lot of the ideas Bernie is in favor of. So look at the pharma bill and what happened there. Um, Bernie proposed this bill. I've gone over this before, how we were going to import drugs from Canada for a cheaper price, and 13 Democrats voted it down, and therefore it didn't pass. So Chuck Schumer had a meeting with the 13 Democrats who voted against it, and he was trying to have this call for unity, right? And mediate between Bernie and these people, and there was like an air of frustration in the room. Everyone was saying, and now it's looking like that's kind of evolving, and Trump's in favor of doing that. Cory Booker, who was previously against it, just shows he has no principles whatsoever. He's now a co-sponsor of the bill. And by the way, he said he was not for the bill originally because he didn't trust the FDA under Trump. He didn't trust the fact that he was going to deregulate, and he just said in the speech last night specifically, "Yeah, I'm going to deregulate the FDA. We're gonna cut and all that." So we'll see what happens. I don't know. Is Cory Booker going to switch again? I would guess probably not, but we'll see. And look, I mean, on that topic, Trump and deregulating, we just have to fight. That's just an issue where we're going to have to fight across a whole strand of different issues. The environment, businesses, and lowering taxes, as I said, is like a ruse to try and say, like, oh, we're going to stop offshoring our jobs, and then they'll come here and then effectively pay nothing in taxes. But they're going to create some jobs, so that's great. And then counter extremism, like, and this is from Reuters. It almost sounds like an Onion article, but Trump took this counter-extremism task force and now made it focus solely on Islamic terrorism. And this was a topic that did come up in the address to Congress. And he is trying to make the point that, like, Muslim terrorism is our biggest threat, and that's a dangerous road, strategically. You could alienate a lot of people, for one thing, but in this country, we don't actually, like, that's not the number one cause of violence and terrorism. It's actually, far-right extremism and white supremacy. And we're seeing, an uptick in that. And we saw just a little bit of lip service to that. But he's much more content going after brown-skinned people because he understands that that's going to bode well for his votes. And, lastly, with Bernie leading the party, he has to speak out about Justice Democrats. I think it's inevitable that he will, just a matter of time. So he has to start, really pushing. And, he's already an independent. So I think he should take advantage of that and make the Democrats worry. And he's going to be, he's going to experience a lot of criticism from the Democrats for supposedly stealing their supporters. But look, the Democrats, it's their job to keep the support. They're the ones that have to listen to their constituents. And if their constituents aren't satisfied, then how are you going to blame them for going towards what they agree with? And that is a winning argument, in my opinion. You're not going to, like, talk your way around, like, oh, like, we have to stick to the Democratic Party always, 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 and we'll always do that no matter what we do, even if it's complete shit. Well, the job, in my opinion, for Bernie Sanders, is that he's going to say, no, we're going to stand up for what the people want, and we're going to build our own support. If you're really not going to get serious about this, Democrats, we're going to keep going this path, and until you really seriously consider our proposals, then that's it. That's what we're going to do. Like with the whole meeting with Schumer and other congressmen, it shows, I think, that their relationship with Bernie is such a tenuous one, where he got people, specifically millennials, involved in politics for the very first time, and they weren't as excited about Hillary, so their support kind of hinges on Bernie, and he's been devoting his time to trying to transform the Democrats, but maybe it's time for him to realize that, if you're going to go from the inside, maybe that's not the best option. Maybe, and that's the thing, is that, like, you have to approach it not just like, what do I think is right just in general. What is right for me in my position. So what I mean by that is, people are going to run for Congress as part of Justice Democrats, and what their plan is, at the congressional level. Bernie is a senator. He's been a senator for a number of years now. He was in the House of Representatives at first. And, he's been at this for quite some time now. So maybe for someone like Bernie, who's been a part of this process for so long, maybe it's time that he just gets serious about building his own party. And what that'll do, like I have just said a million times now, is it's going to get people excited. They're going to follow him, most likely, because they trust him. And the Democrats are going to see that, and they're going to be like, oh boy, we better adopt some of his policy positions. And yeah, I'm sure. Okay, yeah, they already did that. They don't owe him a thing. Well, tell that to the people that are, going to be the supporters. Okay, if that's what really matters, then you should be worrying about what the people want, and not just like, 25% of what people want or 30% of what people want. You should care about what they want in general. I think it's time for Bernie to take risks, and that's what this election showed us, is that this is not the time to play things by the book. Trump is someone who is not like a normal politician, so it's going to require, non-traditional political thought on this. And I mean, they just had no engagement, really, the Clinton team on the ground. They weren't trying to court new voters. They were trying to make sure that the people that were Democrat were just going to vote Democrat. And that's not good. I mean, when you have establishment people admitting that, you understand that there's a problem. And their solution, I think, is just anti-Trump all the time. But that's not going to be enough, because people want an economic message to stand by. Yeah, I mean, like, they always focus on the Russia thing, and I think that there's merit to what's going on in terms of, like, we should be investigating and be leery of that. But that's not a substitute for a platform, as I've been over. Bernie's main message to me should be, along with getting the grassroots support across all 50 states, it should be, get serious about ending corruption from corporations and individual donors such as Betsy DeVos, who, pretty much bought her way into her position by donating millions of dollars to the Republican Party. And, just as a little side note here, she's basically been praising historically black colleges and universities, which for those who don't know, like that's basically a term that came from segregation. So she's like praising Jim Crow laws, and this is how bad things have gotten. These are the people that have power and have the money in order to do things. So we have to get money out of politics, support a message that resonates with the American people, and look across all the different issues that Bernie is in support of: single-payer health care, ending interventionist wars overseas. These are things that the American people support largely, and the Democrats could capitalize on that platform and be a truly liberal party, but they're afraid of losing corporate money. They're so worried that if they lose the corporate money, they're going to lose. Well, you took all the corporate money you wanted last time and you lost. So clearly, you have to think about what you're doing, and that's just it. Like, he needs to hammer the Democrats endlessly, I think. He has to hold them accountable to these principles and these policy proposals. It's not just about the principles. It's about holding policy positions that the American people are getting excited about and want to support. You know, when you say things like we're going to like basically have a public option and just expand Obamacare. At this point now, yeah, that's popular because the alternative is repeal it. But people want a real solution that's gonna cost them less money. Okay, so I don't know what that looks like. Where I guess you just have a public option, and people can buy into Medicaid however it works. That's probably going to be better in the long run. But people are in favor of single payer health care largely. And then yeah, like I said with the interventionist wars, it's just going on, and there's never like even a discussion about backing out of them. And Trump likes to point fingers about like whose blunder it is, and like, oh, I should have never, I would have never done that. Well, you're doing it now because you're still engaging in the process. It's still happening. So people are in favor of trying to end those things because it's wasteful, and it's only a benefit to corporations, and meanwhile veterans die and people lose loved ones, and that's no good.